The email arrived at 2:17 a.m., glowing on Daniel's laptop like a quiet warning. He had been staring at spreadsheets for hours, trying to fix numbers that refused to align. The office was dark, except for the small desk lamp that threw long shadows across the walls. He almost ignored the notification. Almost. But the sender's name stopped him. Cold Marcus Hale, his best friend. His partner. The man who had stood beside him for 15 years. Daniel clicked the message, not knowing that a single decision would redraw the lines of his life. The subject read, "Final agreement signed." There was no greeting, no explanation, just an attachment. His pulse slowed instead of racing. A strange calm filled him as he opened the file. It was the investor contract for their company's biggest expansion yet. The deal they had worked toward since their early days in a cramped garage office. He scrolled carefully, page after page. Terms, conditions, signatures. At the bottom, beneath the final clause, Marcus's name was printed in bold. The investors' names followed. Daniel searched for his own signature. It wasn't there. He scrolled again, slower this time, as if his name might appear if he wished hard enough. It didn't. The contract listed Marcus as sole executive owner, sole decision-maker, sole beneficiary. The room seemed smaller, the air thinner. Daniel leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling, replaying the last few weeks in his mind. Marcus had been distant, yes, but busy, focused. That wasn't unusual during negotiations. They had faced pressure before, investors demanding faster growth, clients expecting bigger results. Daniel had always been the cautious one. He believed in steady progress, in building something strong instead of something flashy. Marcus, on the other hand, loved risk. He thrived on bold moves. That balance had defined them. It had made them powerful, until now. Daniel closed the laptop, but couldn't close the thought burning in his mind. This wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. He stood and walked to the window. The city outside was silent, streetlights flickering on empty roads. 15 years. 15 years of shared dreams, shared failures, shared victories. He remembered the first client they ever signed. The night they celebrated with cheap takeout because they couldn't afford anything else. He remembered promising each other that no matter how big they became, they would never forget where they started. Somewhere along the way, one of them had Daniel's phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus. "We need to talk tomorrow." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just a meeting request, as if they were strangers scheduling a business review. Daniel didn't respond. He didn't trust his voice yet. Morning came quickly. He hadn't slept, showered, dressed, and drove to the office building they now owned. The glass tower reflected the rising sun, bright and proud. It looked like success. It felt like loss. Marcus was already inside, standing near the conference table, reviewing documents with calm precision. He looked the same as always, sharp. Suit, steady posture, controlled expression. If he felt guilt, it didn't show. Daniel stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You saw the contract. It wasn't a question." Daniel nodded. He kept his tone steady. "Why?" Marcus placed the papers down and clasped his hands together. "Because this opportunity required speed. The investors wanted one clear leader." Daniel frowned slightly. "We've always led together." Marcus shook his head. "You hesitate too much. You question every risk. This deal would have fallen apart if we waited." Daniel absorbed the words carefully. Not anger, not insult, just cold reasoning. "So you cut me out?" he asked. Marcus met his gaze without flinching, protected. The company, there it was. In Marcus's mind, this wasn't betrayal, it was strategy. He truly believed Daniel's caution was weakness. He believed he had carried the heavier burden, made the harder calls, pushed them forward while Daniel held them back. Daniel felt something inside him crack. not loudly, but deeply. "We built this together," he said quietly. Marcus exhaled, "And I finished it." The conversation ended not with shouting, but with distance. Daniel walked out of the office carrying nothing but his phone and a quiet storm in his chest. Employees greeted him in the hallway, unaware that ownership had shifted overnight. He nodded politely. He didn't correct them. Not yet. Outside. The world moved normally. Cars honked. People hurried to work. No one knew that 15 years of loyalty had just been erased with a signature. Daniel drove home without music, without thought. He replayed every late-night discussion, every strategy session, every risk they had debated. He realized something painful. Marcus had been preparing for this moment longer than Daniel had noticed. Small changes, private meetings, subtle shifts. In authority, the signs had been there. Daniel had trusted too easily. Trust had been his strength. Now it felt like his flaw. By afternoon, the official announcement hit the company's internal network. Marcus Hale appointed as sole CEO. Visionary leadership. Bold new direction. Daniel read the message twice. His name was mentioned only once in past tense. Co-founder Daniel Reed played an important role in the early growth stages. As if he were already history. His phone exploded with messages from colleagues. Confusion. Shock. Questions Daniel didn't answer immediately. He sat in his living room staring at the blank wall. Anger finally surfaced. Not wild or loud, but sharp. He thought about confronting Marcus publicly, about calling investors and exposing everything, about dragging the truth into the light. But another voice inside him whispered caution. Reacting now would make him look unstable. Marcus had positioned himself carefully. Daniel needed clarity before action. As evening approached, Marcus called again. This time, Daniel answered. "I didn't want it to happen this way," Marcus said. Daniel almost laughed at the choice of words. "But you wanted it to happen," he replied. Silence. Then Marcus spoke more firmly. "This is bigger than both of us. The company needs decisive leadership." Daniel felt the weight of that sentence. Bigger than both of us. It sounded noble. It sounded justified. But beneath it lay a simple truth. Marcus believed Daniel was no longer necessary. "You should have told me," Daniel said. Marcus hesitated for the first time. "You would have fought it." Daniel ended the call without another word. That night, he walked through the old garage where their company had started. He had kept it as storage, a reminder of humble beginnings. Dust covered the original desks. A faded whiteboard still carried ideas scribbled years ago. Daniel ran his fingers across the surface and remembered who they had been two young men with. Nothing but ambition and trust. Somewhere between success and pressure, that trust had fractured. He realized something as he stood there. Marcus hadn't just taken a title. He had taken a piece of Daniel's identity. For 15 years, Daniel had introduced himself as co-founder, as partner, as equal. Now he was none of those things. He was displaced. That hurt more than financial loss. As midnight approached again, Daniel sat alone, replaying the betrayal from every angle. He could almost understand Marcus's logic. Investors prefer one voice. Growth demands speed. Risk sometimes requires boldness. But understanding didn't erase the sting. It deepened it because this wasn't done out of hatred. It was done out of ambition. And ambition, when left unchecked, can justify anything. Daniel opened his laptop once more and studied the contract carefully. Legal, clean, ruthless, Marcus had moved with precision. There was no easy way to reverse it. Daniel leaned back and closed his eyes. The initial shock had faded. In its place stood something quieter, stronger, resolve. If Marcus believed he had removed the weaker link, he was mistaken. Daniel wasn't weak. He was patient. And patience sees what pride overlooks. He didn't yet know what he would do. He only knew one thing. He would not disappear quietly. The betrayal had drawn a line between who he had been and who he would become. And as the clock struck to 17 a.m. again, exactly 24 hours later, Daniel made a silent promise to himself. He would rise from this, not through anger, not through noise, but through strategy. Marcus had chosen speed. Daniel would choose precision. The game had changed. And for the first time since reading that email, Daniel felt something unexpected. Not despair, not rage, focus. Daniel did not rush. That was the first difference between him and Marcus. While headlines praised the company's bold new direction, Daniel stayed quiet. He stopped answering emotional messages. He stopped replaying the phone call in his head. Instead, he began studying. Every morning he woke before sunrise, brewed coffee, and reviewed documents he had saved over the years, contracts, client histories, performance reports. He knew the company's foundation better than anyone. He had built most of its systems himself. If Marcus was now standing alone at the top, he was standing on ground Daniel designed. That thought didn't bring comfort. It brought clarity. Marcus believed speed was power. Daniel believed knowledge was power. And knowledge lasted longer. He rented a small office across town. It was nothing like the glass tower he once walked into every day. The paint peeled in the corners. The carpet was worn. But it was his. No shared signatures. No hidden decisions. He placed a single desk near the window and a whiteboard on the wall. On that board, he wrote 3 words: build, strengthen, outlast. This was not about shouting revenge. It was about quiet correction. If Marcus thought Daniel slowed things down, Daniel would show him what careful growth could do. He called former clients not to complain, not to attack, but to reconnect. He asked simple questions. How are things going? What do you need this year? What problems are you facing? Many were surprised to hear from him. Some hesitated. A few admitted they missed his steady approach. Daniel listened more than he spoke. Listening had always been his strength. Now it became his strategy. Meanwhile, Marcus felt the pressure of leading alone. Investors expected fast returns. Employees watched his every move. At first, the excitement carried him. He announced bold expansions. He signed new deals. He spoke at conferences about vision and courage. Applause followed him everywhere. But applause fades quickly when numbers lag. Small cracks began to show. A rushed contract led to confusion. A new partner demanded changes. Marcus handled each issue firmly, but inside he felt the weight. He told himself Daniel would have slowed these decisions anyway. He reminded himself that hesitation was weakness. Yet late at night, when the office emptied, he sometimes stared at the empty chair across from him, the chair Daniel used to sit in. Leadership felt heavier without balance. Daniel's new company started with only 2 clients. That was enough. He focused on delivering exceptional results. No shortcuts, no risky promises, just solid work. Word spread quietly. 1 client became 3. 3 became 6. He hired a small team, people who valued long-term trust over quick profit. He was honest with them about his past. He did not speak bitterly of Marcus. He simply said, "We are building something stable." His team respected that. Stability is rare in a world addicted to speed. Daniel worked long hours, but this time the exhaustion felt different. It was not fueled by competition. It was fueled by purpose. Yet beneath that purpose, a shadow remained. Every new success felt like a point scored in an invisible game. He told himself it was about growth, but deep down, he still measured progress. Against Marcus. One afternoon, Daniel received news that Marcus had secured a major national contract. It's the kind they once dreamed about together. The announcement filled industry news feeds. Photos of Marcus shaking hands with executives flooded. Social media. Daniel stared at the screen longer than he wanted to admit. A sharp ache returned to his chest. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. What if Marcus was right? What if boldness was the only way to win? Daniel closed the laptop and walked outside. The air was cool. He breathed deeply and reminded himself why he chose this path. It was not racing Marcus. He was rebuilding himself. Revenge that depends on someone else's failure is fragile. Strength built on values lasts longer. That thought steadied him. Still, opportunity presented itself in unexpected ways. A former senior manager from Marcus's company requested a private meeting with Daniel. They met at a quiet cafe. The manager looked uneasy. Things are moving. Too fast, she admitted. Some decisions feel rushed. People are worried. She didn't speak badly of Marcus, but concern lined her voice. Daniel listened carefully. He realized something important. Marcus's weakness was not cruelty. It was overconfidence. In his drive to prove himself, he ignored caution. Daniel could use that knowledge. Not to destroy, but to outmaneuver. He offered the manager a position. In his growing firm, she accepted. That single hire shifted momentum. She brought insight, experience, and trust from others who respected Daniel's leadership style. At night, Daniel's internal struggle intensified. He imagined confronting Marcus publicly, exposing strategic flaws, proving investors had chosen the wrong leader. He even reviewed legal options. There were clauses in older agreements that could raise questions. Nothing illegal, nothing dishonest, just leverage. He kept those documents locked in a drawer. He told himself he was simply being prepared. But preparation slowly felt like temptation. The more his company grew, the more he saw a path to challenging Marcus directly. He could schedule a press conference. He could present data showing his firm's steady rise compared to Marcus's unstable leaps. The industry loved competition stories. It would be dramatic. It would be satisfying. He imagined Marcus watching headlines shift. He imagined the shock. In his eyes, the thought gave Daniel a brief rush of heat. Then it faded, replaced by unease. Marcus, on the other side of the city, sensed something changing. Several mid-level clients quietly transferred contracts to Daniel's firm. Nothing catastrophic, but noticeable. Investors began asking subtle questions about long-term stability. Marcus responded with confidence, but irritation crept into his tone. In private moments, he thought about calling Daniel, not to argue, but to understand. Pride stopped him. He had chosen this path. Calling now would feel like weakness. Instead, he pushed harder. More deals. Bigger announcements, faster growth. Speed had won him control. He believed it would secure victory too, yet speed without. Reflection is exhausting. Daniel's company reached its first major milestone within a year. Profits were steady. Employee turnover was low. Client satisfaction was high. Industry analysts began mentioning his name again, not as a former co-founder, but as a rising independent leader. The recognition felt good, but it also sharpened the question inside him. Was this enough? Or did he still need Marcus to feel the sting of loss? One evening, while reviewing reports, Daniel opened the drawer containing the leverage documents. He laid them on his desk. The information could legally trigger a review of Marcus's national contract. It would not destroy the company, but it would cause public embarrassment and financial delay. Daniel traced his finger across the pages. This was the weapon he had quietly prepared. Not loud, not illegal, just strategic. His heart beat faster. He imagined the chain reaction. Investors would panic. Media would speculate. Marcus would scramble. To defend decisions, the narrative would shift from bold visionary to reckless leader. Daniel would be positioned as the steady alternative. The revenge would be clean, almost elegant. No shouting, no scandal. Just consequences. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He asked himself a simple question. After this, then what? Would the betrayal disappear? Would the years of friendship feel restored? Or would he simply replace Marcus's ambition with his own? Hunger for dominance. The silence in the room answered him louder than words. Revenge promises balance but rarely delivers peace. Days passed, the opportunity to act grew closer. An industry conference approached where Marcus would present the national contract publicly. Investors, partners, media all in one room. If Daniel submitted his concerns at the right time, the effect would be immediate. He drafted the email more than once. Each time he stopped before sending, his team noticed his distraction. They trusted him. They believed in the culture he created, steady, ethical, thoughtful. If he moved out of vengeance, he risked shaping his company around bitterness instead of vision. That realization unsettled him more than Marcus ever could. On the night before the conference, Daniel stood alone in his office again. It's the same desk, the same whiteboard. The words build, strengthen, outlast still stared back at him. He understood something deeply in that moment. Outlasting someone does not require destroying them. It requires endurance. Marcus had betrayed him. Yes, but Marcus had also revealed a flaw in his self-impatience. Daniel's true revenge might not be exposure. It might be resilience. The conference would test that belief. The documents remained in his briefcase. The choice hovered over him like a storm about to break. And as the city lights flickered outside his window, Daniel realized the real battle was not against Marcus. It was against the part of himself that wanted to see him fall.